Welcome back to AMC Presents. Today, editor and producer William Ford will be talking with Grammy-nominated soprano Fotina Naumenko, who has been praised for her radiant voice, Boston Globe, and spectacular virtuosic hi-jinks, Boston Musical Intelligencer. She has performed with leading ensembles, including the Boston Pops and Artefact Ensemble, and has appeared at the Tanglewood Festival of Contemporary Music. Her debut solo album, Bespoke Songs, was nominated for a 2025 Grammy for Best Classical Solo Vocal Album. Fotina holds degrees from the Eastman School of Music and the Cincinnati College-Conservatory, along with a Fulbright postgraduate diploma from the Rimsky-Korsakov State Conservatory in Russia. She currently serves as Associate Professor of Voice at Shenandoah Conservatory, mentoring the next generation of singers. I'm thrilled to share this conversation with you here on Atlanta Music Critic, where we explore the artistry of today's most compelling musicians. If you enjoy in-depth discussions about music and performance, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an interview. More exciting guests are coming soon. Stay tuned. Now, here's William and Fotina.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you also. It's really a pleasure to get a chance to talk with you. And to begin with, where were you born?
I was born in upstate New York in Rochester.
What was it like growing up in Rochester for you?
It was great. As you know, the Eastman School of Music is right there, and it was within walking distance of where my parents lived. And so I kind of thought that everyone had that kind of musical environment in their backyard. You only know what you grow up with. So I would go to these beautiful concerts, and my parents would have me be in the choir during church services, and Eastman students would be singing in that choir. And actually, my first voice teacher was in that choir, and so I was really immersed in a musical environment without even knowing it when I was a child. So I think being there in those circumstances really shaped who I became. So it was great.
Your parents, were they musically inclined? Obviously, they like to hear music. Were they musicians or musically inclined themselves?
They wouldn't say that they're professional musicians, but my father's an Eastern Orthodox priest, and a lot of that tradition includes chanting. Most of the services have music, and my mom is the choir director and has been for 30 years, but she doesn't consider herself professional just because, she didn't go to school for it. She learned on the job, but that's partly why I was in the choir, is because my mom was directing, and so there was nowhere else for me to be. So even though they're not technically professional musicians, music is a huge part of what they do and their church serving. So I would say yes, they are musicians.
Apparently, you were so immersed in music, you probably didn't have an aha moment saying to yourself, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Is that accurate? Or might there have been a place where you said, oh, gee, this is wonderful?
I think I did have an aha moment. I didn't know, when I was 5, like some musicians know, and singers don't need to know that early. I think some instrumentalists need to know that early just to be ahead of the curve. But singers with our instrument maturing a bit later, we have more time to decide. So I think for me, that time came when I was actually homeschooled. I was homeschooled all the way through my K through 12 education. And at age 16, I went to a community college in Rochester to finish out my high school, but through college credits. I wasn't yet sure what I wanted to do. I was 16 at the time. I was taking voice lessons. I loved music, but I wasn't sure. And I realized that the class that I enjoyed the most was choir at the community college, and that's where time went the fastest. That's where I felt like I belonged. And I kind of thought about time and how to spend your time and how do I want to be spending my time in the future. The time I most enjoyed was my voice lessons, my choir experience. So I said, you know what? I don't know exactly where this is going to lead me. I don't know how I'm going to make money, but this is how I want to spend my time. So I think that was my light bulb. Before then, it was just, oh, I kind of like this. People think I'm good at it, so I like that attention. And so it wasn't quite so serious. But then I thought, this is something that I could really pursue. And that's when I started looking into auditioning for conservatory programs.
How is it that your parents decided that you should be homeschooled?
I think it was a combination of reasons, but I think my parents felt strongly that they wanted me to grow up bilingual. My family background is Ukrainian and Russian, and we spoke Russian at home. If you're gone at school all day, that immersion isn't really complete. And so they really wanted me to grow up with the language of my ancestors. And I think that was the main reason. And they also just they were not crazy about the school system where we lived. So I think they just wanted more say in what I was learning and the kind of environments that I was in. So I think those were the reasons. And honestly, I thrived in that environment because all I wanted to do was sit around and read books. So so it worked for me.
Did you read books in English or in Russian?
In both languages, actually. English is easier for me as a language, and as a kid, I think I gravitated towards that. I was like, well, I don't want to be different. You know, when you're a kid, you want to fit in. So I read English books mostly for fun, but my grandparents actually lived with us when I was a kid on my mother's side, and my grandma would read us Russian novels out loud. So I remember her reading Tolstoy to us, so War and Peace, which, you know, was like thick volume, and you know, we're young, so she would kind of skip over the war parts and like do more of the peace parts. But yes, so I was immersed in books in both languages.
Do you still speak?
I do speak Russian, yes. I studied there for a year, so I lived there on a Fulbright grant a few years ago, and I am still fluent. I don't use it as much. I wish that I had cause to practice it daily. But also I wish that I had learned Ukrainian as well, because my background is half and half. So actually, one of these days I'll take a sabbatical from my university job and dig in and learn Ukrainian language and diction, because I'm interested in that as well. But I'm trying to teach my son some Russian as well. I'm trying to keep it in my life.
When did you start taking voice lessons?
I must have been around 13 years old. And it was with a tenor who was studying music education at the Eastman School of Music. And he charged my parents something ridiculously low, like $5 for a 45-minute lesson, which was, you know, so kind of him, because my parents couldn't afford it, and also probably just the goodness of his heart. So I took lessons with him starting then. It was really educational, but I think I really started taking it seriously when I was around 16, like I told you. So I had a good solid foundation of a few years, but then we really started working on repertoire for auditions and really getting serious.
Were you working with him during that really getting serious phase, or had you moved on to another teacher?
No, it was with him. Thankfully, he was a really wonderful teacher, really supportive. His wife is a pianist, and so that was a wonderful combination too, because she played for my pre-screen recordings, which I wish I still had those. I might have thrown them out in embarrassment at some point, but I would love to go back and hear those pre-screen recordings for my undergraduate work. They were so instrumental and helpful in getting me into programs where I wanted to go for my undergraduate.
So you went to Eastman.
I did, just down the road.
You were there 4 years?
Yes, I was there for 4 years for my bachelor of music degree.
Were there any particular instructors who really had a tremendous influence on you?
Yes, I had two teachers there. Karen Holvik was my first teacher. She's a soprano. She actually moved on to the New England Conservatory after my freshman year, I believe. We were together for a year. Then I transferred to Catherine Chizinski, who's a mezzo-soprano who's still on faculty there, actually. So those were my two main mentors at Eastman.
After Eastman, you went to...
I went to the University of Cincinnati.
Your focus there was, of course, voice, but any particular area?
Cincinnati is a fairly heavy opera school. So I think while I was there, I was mostly focused on this path of master's degree, young artist program, opera singer. So that was my goal at the time. That's not how my life turned out, but I think that was what I thought I was training for at the time. And there, a wonderful teacher, Thomas Barisel, was my mentor. He's since retired. He's still teaching, but he teaches people to fly airplanes instead of sing now, which he's always done. But I think that's such a great combination that he teaches people to sing opera and to fly airplanes. I asked him which one's more difficult, and he actually said teaching singing. So great.
He should take you up sometime and you could see what it's like.
I don't like flying that much. I like singing. I don't like flying.
So why not opera for you?
I think for me, I love opera and I don't think I have anything against singing opera. It just didn't work out for my voice. I think I have a high voice, I have a light lyric voice. And so I found more of a home in the professional small ensemble singing. So my voice likes to blend. I love me some straight tone. So just the kind of voice that I have lent itself to other things. I think that just in my soul, I'm drawn to new music and chamber music, and that's always been what really excites me. I think in a practical sense, now in my life, an opera contract would take 4 weeks, 6 weeks away from home. And since I'm a full-time tenured professor, that's an awfully long time to be away from my students and from my job. So the contracts that I take tend to be a week or 2 weeks maximum, which fits in better with my life. So it's not a conscious choice to not sing opera, it's practical. It's also a decision that I made when my husband and I started our family. So traveling and being away from a young child for a month or more, or bringing them with, is just very complicated. So I think that my life and my interests just brought me in a different direction.
You're obviously involved in a lot of new music, and we'll get to talk a bit about your CD, which is clearly new music. Are there composers that you particularly like today, contemporary composers that you seem drawn to?
Well, of course, all the composers who are featured on my album are all my favorite. And I wouldn't pick a favorite child or a favorite composer. But I don't know. I think I'm excited by any genre that has a new fresh take. So for instance, Sariajo is what is someone active in opera that I'm really excited about. But really, I think the kind of new music that I'm attracted to is something where you can grab onto something. So either something that has a melody or something that has a rhythm that you can latch onto. You can probably tell in my album, which I'm sure we'll talk about soon, that it's fairly accessible new music. And so I'm attracted to new compositions that are not afraid to be beautiful or to be accessible, but also have a new quality to them. So I think my favorite composer is anyone who has that authentic voice. And sometimes new music can take itself a bit too seriously and just kind of be out there for the sake of being out there. And that's not what I connect to.
Very good and very diplomatic answer. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
By the way, do you listen to music yourself?
You know, that's a question I struggle with because I sometimes I need silence in my life because I have so much music, both in my own music making, with my students' music making. So my days are filled with music, and I love that. And I think that's wonderful. So sometimes I gravitate towards podcasts more than listening to music while I'm on my own free time or if I'm driving. But really, if I have the time and I feel like I have the mental space for music, I'm listening to Taylor Swift, I'm listening to Chapel Row, and I'm listening to Beyonce. So something that's a bit removed from what I do as my job in music. At the Grammys this year, I went completely fangirl over all of these celebrities that were there. So so I kind of treat that as a separate, like my music for fun is different than my music for work.
Congratulations to the way on the Grammy nomination. So you went out to the ceremonies?
I did. I've not been before. I've been a member of the Academy for a few years, but I never went, and so this seemed like the year to go.
Did you meet Beyonce?
I did not meet Beyonce, but she did float past me. So, so, so as a nominee, you get pretty good seats at the televised ceremony. So I was sitting on the front row directly at the hallway where all the famous people who sit at the tables up front had to walk past my seat to get to their tables. So I saw so many people, including Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Billie Eilish, just all the people walked past me, and so that was really a cool moment.
Do you yourself ever sing pop music?
Not publicly. So, so I might sing along. I might sing along for fun, but I think my muscles are just so used to the setup for classical singing that, the beltier the different style, it just doesn't come as naturally to me. And so I always think, oh, this opera singer is trying to sing this pop music, and it just sounds a little pretentious. So so I don't always. There are some people who are so good at that crossover technique, and that's just not something that I've dug into quite yet.
I don't know if you remember at one of the award ceremonies many years ago, Aretha Franklin sang Nessun Dorma. And
Yeah, I think I remember hearing a recording.
I give her an A for effort for sure. Was it a great performance? Probably not. Sometimes those crossovers just really don't work. And I understand
Yes.
the hesitancy.
I think you have to be honest with yourself as to who you are. So I'm pretty honest with myself that I live mostly in the classical world while appreciating other genres.
You teach, of course, at
Mhm.
Shenandoah, right?
Yes, Shenandoah Conservatory. It's in Winchester, Virginia, about an hour and a half west of DC.
Sure. And how many students do you have?
My studio is usually about 18 students, and that varies from undergraduate. I have undergraduate, master's, and doctoral students.
And have any of them gone on to Grammys and left you behind?
Not yet, not
Not
yet, but
yet.
I certainly hope that they will follow in my footsteps.
Turning to your album, when did the whole process start? Because it's more than just the recording, of course. It's getting the commissioning and so on. Would you talk a bit about that?
So it was over a 4-year process, start to finish. I had been on many recordings previously as a contractor, as an ensemble member, as a soloist, but this was my first sort of I'm spearheading this, my personal project. And it came about when I was recording things for during the pandemic times. I would something similar to this. I would put in an earbud, record my own vocal line of some piece, and then that would be spliced together with someone else's recordings, and that would be the way that we presented concerts during that time. And often I would record in my closet to dampen the sound a bit, and or in front of a green screen. And that music making experience, while I was grateful for it because the show went on, it was quite lonely, and I missed that communal music making experience. And so also I had a lot of time to think, and so I thought, what do I want to be doing? Like, what can I plant seeds for so that then we can go through with the plan once we are able to be together and in person. And so that's why this idea of commissioning came about, because we could plant those seeds of those new pieces in the couple of years, or at the time, I obviously didn't know how long it would be. It ended up being a couple of years where we were kind of in lockdown mode. And that was the time when these commissions and these pieces started to take shape with my composer colleagues. And the chamber music aspect was because I wanted to collaborate with as many friends as possible, and I love chamber music, and so that's why I decided that that would be the theme, because I just wanted to include as many friends as possible and make music with as many live humans as possible once the lockdowns were over. So that's kind of how the idea started and evolved. A lot of these people are friends and colleagues at Shenandoah. So I have this amazing musical community that's right here. And we're all so busy, we don't always have time to experience each other as artists. We're colleagues, and we're in faculty meetings. And I know that these amazing musicians are all around me. And so the part of the process was really curating projects where I could work with a particular musician that I admired, or a good friend that I wanted to make music with.
When you were commissioning these works, was it a formal process, or over that Starbucks coffee did you say, hey, here's a thought I have. Would you want to do it?
Well, we couldn't go to Starbucks, so it was the pandemic, so it was Zoom.
All right.
So it kind of started with a Zoom meeting with Jonathan Newman, who wrote the first set of pieces. And he's my colleague at Shenandoah. So I kind of started at home talking to him. And that was something I had thought about previously. All of these composers, I enjoy their music. So these are people that I've known from graduate school or through professional connections for many years. And so I know that I love their music. With commissions, it's hard because you're not in control of what you get, you know? So I thought if I commission people whose music I love, chances are I'm going to love what they come up with for me. And that did turn out to be true, which is great. So these are people I've known professionally or personally for many years. Yes, it was not like, hey, let's do this together for exposure. Like this was going to be formal. I was going to write grants. I was going to get everyone paid fairly. So it wasn't that kind of like friendly exchange where we're just going to make something together. Like I wanted it to be professional, paid, you know, everything as it's supposed to be. These are my friends. And so creating work with each other was really special.
You got in the music that each of them were submitting to you, and you went through them. Did you ever ask for any changes?
I did. The composers were very thorough in asking me about my voice, about my range, about my preferences in the process. Everyone has a little bit different process, but for instance, Carrie Magan sent me a questionnaire where I filled in, and that helped her to know things ahead of time to make sure it fit my voice. Jonathan Newman asked me for a recital recording where I had a bunch of different kinds of music. So he had the sheet music and he had my recording. So he got to know my voice well that way. Benedict Sheehan and I have worked together for many years, so he knows my voice very well. But I would also sometimes record voice memos into my phone and send things to him so he could hear what are my lowest notes, what are my highest notes, what kind of color do they create. I believe with Jen Jolly, we had a meeting and discussed what my voice likes as well. So this was something we talked about beforehand. But once I got the pieces, there were a few changes actually that I asked for. If there's a particular vowel that's not comfortable in a certain range, sometimes I would ask for an adjustment. And that's the nice thing about working with composers who are alive. They can make changes.
It's true.
And they were so accommodating, and oftentimes they were like, "Oh, it even sounds better that way." So I'm grateful to them for their flexibility. Actually, one of Jonathan's pieces, I was actually singing the wrong note, but it wasn't on purpose. and so Jonathan's wife has perfect pitch. She conducted the piece, and she said, "Are you aware that here Fotina's singing this note, not this note?" And I had already like worked it into my voice. It was still in the chord. It was not like harmonically weird. So Jonathan was like, that's what it was supposed to be in the first place. So he just changed it for me, which was very nice. But mostly if something was uncomfortable, I just asked and they were very flexible.
And so you still remain friends with them. I mean, none of it turned out to be a disaster.
Amazing. No, we are still friends. So yeah, it all worked out.
When it got to thinking about recording this, how did you locate producer and a recording engineer and all of that?
It was also through connections and also geography. So I had mentioned I'd been on many albums that I wasn't the project lead on, but I got to know certain teams. And so I kind of had in my mind who I would work well with. So Dan Shores is also faculty at Shenandoah here, but he is affiliated with Sonoluminous, which is a recording studio in Boyce, Virginia, which is about 20 minutes away from Shenandoah. Not affiliated, but it has a great reputation. It's an acoustic environment. So it's an old church where they set up the recording equipment. And so it's ideal for classical because I don't sing well when I'm in a booth that doesn't have that acoustic quality. It's just not how I'm used to singing. I'm used to filling a space with my voice. So it's basically like recording a performance, recording a recital, even though it's a recording studio. That feedback and the way I sing are really affected by the environment. And so I knew I wanted that kind of an environment for the recording. Sonoluminous was geographically close. I admired Dan Shores and his work. Through him and through the Skylark Ensemble, who I sing with in Massachusetts, Dan Shores and Dan Mercurio, my producer, often worked together on those projects, and I liked the dynamic. I liked the results of those work, and I liked the way that Dan Mercurio works and how he talks to his singers and the kind of positive environment he creates in the recording session. I didn't even search, I just knew that this is what I would work best with.
You all were in the same space. In other words, you weren't separated from the instrumentalists.
No, I wasn't. And that's the way that I feel the most comfortable because I react to them in real time and it feels more like a live performance. And that's how I sing most naturally, and that's what I wanted to capture for the album.
Did you wear earphones while you were doing it?
No.
You want to talk a bit about the music itself?
When you say how to see an angel, don't you think of like harps and cupids and flutes? And doesn't that kind of come to your mind?
And clouds. Got to have clouds.
Of course, clouds too. So I thought it was really a hard assignment that I gave Carrie because Carrie and I chose the poetry together. That was a conversation. We were both inspired by this Dorothy Walters text. But I did ask her in particular for bassoon and piano as a combination because I had Ryan Romine and Marika Bernacki was the pianist who I wanted to do this particular piece with. And so the sound world that she came up with was angelic, but so earthy, like kind of spiritual, but so much more grounded than kind of like the flitty angel harp thing that might stereotypically come to mind. So I thought that lent itself to a really amazing and maybe unexpected result. It just has this sound world that I think is so beautiful. And also Carrie's writing is so interesting. So she has these really atmospheric sections and then she has really rhythmic sections. And as I mentioned before, I like music where there's something to grab onto. And so she has the beautiful melody, she has the rhythm, she has the atmosphere. She really brought everything into this piece.
Piece by Jonathan Newman. Is that where the Emily Dickinson poetry comes in?
That was Jennifer Jolly's piece, Hope is the Thing with Feathers.
That's what I meant.
Yes, that
Go
one.
ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about how her poetry is in the music and how you decided to do that?
Yeah, Jennifer and I had the conversation of wanting a happy ending for our storyline. These poems don't naturally fit together. It's not a set that Emily Dickinson put together. We put them together to tell the story of coming from a painful place. So after great pain, a formal feeling comes. That's the dark part. And then hope is the thing with feathers emerged from that darkness. And then I dwell in possibility. It's just open to the future, and we're hopeful for the future. So we put these poems together as a narrative that I think both of us needed at that point when we were planning this, maybe in 2021. So the poetry, we liked the poems, we connected to the poems. I think mostly we connected to this narrative that we built of coming from a dark place and emerging into a better time.
Talk about Newman's music.
Yeah, Jonathan Newman's music is awesome. It's also it's lyrical. It has rhythm. It has some crossover elements. I'm still singing them classically, but it really has like movement too, for instance, like almost feels like a belty rock song. So I love his music. He also was the only composer who requested that we use different lyrics from different poets and put them together into a song cycle, which is unusual. Usually there's one composer, one lyricist, performers. But we took poetry spanning millennia from different authors, which can feel random, but they were all on the theme of love, all by female authors. Actually, the whole album has female lyricists. But we commissioned Christina Faust, a Michigan-based poet, a friend of Jonathan Newman's, to create a through narrative to link these poems together. So that really created a narrative that the listener can connect to, even though it would seem that the different languages and the different time periods would feel very random. But I think that the emotion is universal through language and through time periods. And I thought that was very unique about Jonathan's piece. And I like that we did that. And his music also has themes throughout that bring them together, even though the style of each movement is very different. So I love how eclectic Jonathan's music is. but it does actually make a cohesive 12 movement piece that fits together nicely at the end of the day.
I want to thank
Understood.
you for spending the time. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's great that you have a good sense of humor. I truly appreciated that.
Thank you, William.
It's been great. Just one final thing. Are you going to tour any of this?
One of the ideas for the album, the make music with as many friends as possible, with as many instruments as possible, really doesn't lend itself to touring. so So I think that it would be a traveling circus if we were to tour. Maybe my next album will be voice and piano, and then we can tour that one.
All right.
So
That's good. Excellent. All right. Anything left that you'd like to say in a minute and 50 seconds?
I just appreciate you highlighting our work, and I just had such a great time putting this music together. It brought a lot of beauty to my life, a lot of beautiful connections to my life. So I hope it brings beauty into my listeners' lives as well.
I loved it. And hey, it
Thank
has
you.
been such fun talking with you. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you, and me too. And I look forward to seeing the final product when you have it.
You bet. Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to
Take
meet
care.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.